So one of my favorite smells is the smell of a pine forest or the pine tree itself. I've spent a lot of time around pine trees. In fact, I really love consuming pine nuts, and I've collected them and shelled them and roasted them and eaten them quite a bit. I love the flavor. So I love the smell of pine trees, pine forests, fir balsam, fir trees, all that good stuff. And Christmas trees, at Christmas time as a kid, when we brought in a freshly cut Christmas tree, I always loved that smell. So today I thought, you know what, since I've been receiving plenty of messages and comments, for me to do a video on fragrances that feature these two notes, pine tree, pine needles, fir balsam fir tree, then I thought, you know, I'll put that video together for you today. And today I've got 16 total fragrances for you to find out all about. So if you're curious to learn about this particular note or notes and find out which fragrances feature these notes, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right, today we're talking about pine tree, pine needles, fir balsam or fir tree, and the fragrances that I'm going to talk to you about today feature these notes, one or the other. Definitely some of them also feature other notes like cedar, perhaps, maybe even sandalwood, and also something like cypress. But I focused on cypress in other videos, and I've done woody fragrances videos in the past, but today I'm only focusing on the pine tree, pine needles, fir balsam, fir tree, all coming right up. But before we do all that, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed to this channel, please do click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So how many of you like the smell of the pine tree, the needles of the pine, the fir balsam, the fir tree, all that good stuff? Are you a fan of it? Have you spent time around it? Have you smelled the smell of it when you're going out to either cut a fresh Christmas tree or buy a Christmas tree? That smell is so fragrant that I really love it. And of course, some trees do produce the nuts that also are in the pine cones, so they fall, and sometimes when you're walking in the forest, you can see the little nuts with the shells, of course. And as a kid, I used to pick them up. Even back where I'm from, we had these pine trees and lots of pine nuts that were picked from the trees. And I love the flavor of pine nuts, but they have a different smell, totally different smell. So the pine tree smell comes from the needles and the sap. And the sap is the part that gives us that resinous quality that sometimes is associated with pine or pine tree or pine needles. But the needles are what the oil comes from pretty much. And you can see them. They're a little sharp sometimes when you've got your hands on them. I'm sure most of you have spent some time around pine trees. If not, I highly recommend go and smell them because they're very fragrant trees. So as I was saying, the oil comes from the pine needles, but I feel like the sap itself has a very strong and resinous smell, which I absolutely love. I love the smell, and I love it transferred over to perfumes. So with the balsam fir, it's woody, grassy, green, and aromatic. Of course, both the pine tree, pine needles, the balsam fir, and the fir tree are all very green, but with this particular balsam fir, it does have woody, grassy, green, and aromatic qualities. There's a spiciness about the balsam fir. There's also a sweetness about it, and both notes, as I said, were very green, obviously. So let's get started with the actual fragrances. Now, I'm glad to have this one particularly in the collection again. It used to be part of the collection of 50 ml bottles, and SERGE LUTENS did a whole bunch of rebranding with their collection of fragrances, and they actually moved this from their regular lineup to an exclusive lineup, which is in this bottle right here. So this is SERGE LUTENS FILLE and AIGUILLES. I think that's how you pronounce this one. It's a very complicated name, and I feel like, or from what I remember, it's translating to girl with needles or pins. So of course pine needles comes to mind, and I think that's where the name comes from. So this one is a fantastic smell, and I'm starting off with this one because I feel like it captures this particular smell perfectly, 100% perfectly. So with this one, you got the pine tree, you got the incense, there's some smoky touches, there's some dried fruits, which gives us the sweetness, and then balsam fir, some spices, bay laurel, and vetiver, and it is a fantastic smell. It's like a Christmas tree in a bottle. It's like a Christmas smell, but not the cooking part, with associated with spices and cooking spices and things like that. This is more outdoors, cold, smoke in the air with some, you know, fireplaces burning, and then of course smelling the trees and the pine trees and things like that. And this actually, as I said, is fantastic. Sad part about this is that it is now in this more higher priced collection, but if you can get a bottle or if you get a decant or something, I highly recommend this one because I feel like it captures this particular smell perfectly. I've gone through many bottles of this one in the 50 ml bottles that SERGE LUTENS used to be in for the longest time, and now that they've done their rebranding, they're completely 100% under Shiseido. They've removed a bunch of regular lineup fragrances and moved them into these kind of exclusive looking models. Anyway, great scent. If you don't know it, do check it out. This is SERGE LUTENS FILLE and AIGUILLES. Very complicated name, but I hope you guys get to try that one because I feel like, as I said, it captures that smell perfectly. All right, so we're going to the house of imaginary authors with their fragrance Cape Heartache. This is it right here. So this one is fir, pine tree. The two notes that I'm focusing on today. There's also other woody notes, but this one adds a curveball into the scent, and that is of strawberries. So you've got strawberry smell, you know, kind of like surrounding the pine trees and the fir trees. So it's a kind of a you know, weird combination, which actually really works. So in the end, when strawberries kind of go into a kind of a girly, kind of young girly, kind of teeny bopper kind of direction, the fir balsam and then the pine tree together adds this kind of like masculine, you know, more intense, robust kind of a touch to the fragrance. So in the end, it kind of balances out the woodiness and the aromatic green touches of the pine tree and the fir balsam. But as I said, there are other woody notes in here, and there's some vanilla and hemlock note as well. In the end, it's a great, great combination of notes. It works. The strawberry, you might think, is a weird note, but it kind of, as I said, balances out the notes rather than going completely masculine with the notes. It adds that kind of sweetness to it. And in the end, this did have that kind of a note in there as well. It had the fir and the pine, but this one had dried fruits, and so you're not smelling strawberries in this one. You're actually smelling, you know, kind of like apricots and peaches and nectarines and things like that. But this one, definitely the strawberry. So this is Imaginary Authors Cape Heartache. Check that one out. But we're moving on to another fragrance from a house called DASEIN. This is Winter. This is also created by the perfumer behind this brand, but it's a different brand, obviously. And this one actually goes into a smoky direction. For me, it smells like a smoky version, less strawberry version of this. So in the end, you're smelling pine forest, the pine tree, but you're actually, it's a darker experience. It's at night perhaps, it's cold outside, it's a little bit along the water, so there's some unique notes like that, but definitely there's a bonfire or, you know, like fire burning. So in the end, the notes in here are coastal forest, driftwood, bonfire, cardamom, tea, lavender, and wild musk. It's a great scent, but you gotta love smoky scents, but it does really, really smell like a pine forest with some smoke in the background. Not a little smoke, a lot of smoke. But anyway, that's Winter Nights by DASEIN. Check that out if you like that idea. So this next one is a fragrance from the house of MEMO Paris. This is Russian Leather. So Russian Leather is on here because in the end it's a fougere with leather, but it's a fougere with pine tree. And it's a very, very frosted, cool fougere because all the notes in here are very, very crisp and cool, chilly kind of notes. So it's a cool, spicy experience. It's a cool woody experience. It's a cool pine experience. So this pine tree, cypress tree, leather, lavender, basil, rosemary, cedar, clary sage, coriander, patchouli, and mint. Lots of aromatic notes, but it smells like a pine forest. It literally does. It's like a pine forest with all those herbs, the aromatic notes with the leather. Of course, MEMO Paris leathers all dry down to a leather. So this is a leather in the end. But for me, it's not about the leather. It's the other parts about the fragrance it features. And when it's called Russian Leather, I think they've captured the Russian pine forest perfectly. And you can experience the coolness in the fragrance. So if you like that idea, the cool kind of crisp winter kind of a chill that kind of warms up to a leather, more of a cool leather, then definitely check out MEMO Paris's Russian Leather. I feel like it's a great solid scent, especially if you like the leather note, especially if you like the pine note. And also you gotta love fougères because it's definitely a fougère fragrance. Another fragrance that sort of comes close to it from the house of Bottega Veneta. This is Pour Homme, Bottega Veneta Pour Homme in the Eau de Toilette concentration. So in the end, to me, this one kind of reminds me of MEMO Paris Russian Leather. Not quite identical, but I feel like the idea is kind of there. I don't know which came first. I think this came first than this. This feels like a more concentrated version of this and a little more oomfier version and a little more a complex version of this. This one seems a little plain, but still a great scent. In the end, this one features lots of pine, lots of fir, and then it also throws in juniper, and there's of course leather. The Bottega Veneta fragrances for men features leather because this fashion house is known for their leather accessories and leather goods, so they throw in the leather with the men's fragrances. So it is a leathery fragrance, but this one to me is less leathery than this. Even though this is a leather, it's not the most leathery of the leather fragrances from Memo Paris. This one even to me, with my wearing, it's less leather. It's more about the aromatics and the pine and the fir balsam for me. So this one also has some labdanum, clary sage, and chili. In the end, it's a pleasant scent. It's masculine. It's quality. It's definitely classy, and it's definitely piney. And of course, it dries down to a lighter leather. So that is Bottega Veneta pour Homme. Sadly, I can't seem to find a Parfum, eau de parfum version of that, which I've been dying to find. I think it's been completely removed, which I hope I can in the future. But if you guys know the eau de parfum version of that fragrance, let me know how you like it in comparison to the original fragrance. So I'm trying to cover a lot of different territories with the pine note and the fir balsam note, and with this one I feel like it's a very unique experience. And this is from the house of l'Artisan Parfumeur. This is Feu d'Absinthe. In the end, it's an absinthe note fragrance, but lots of pine and lots of fir balsam in here as well. So you've got warm wood, you've got pine, you've got fir balsam or balsam fir, star anise, incense, nutmeg, and angelica. What a fantastic smell. Ultra green, ultra aromatic, ultra, the green woody notes of the pine and the fir balsam, but lots of spices in here as well. I just love it. I just wish that they had an EDP version of this one. It seems a little light, but it's for those people that like those light green notes. I feel like, when I'm saying it's light, it's not like ultra light, but if you like a fragrance that's not overwhelmingly strong, you might dig this one, especially if you like absinthe with pine and fir balsam, because those notes are fantastic. So it's a licoricey note of wormwood and star anise coming in with the pine and the fir balsam. Fantastic scent. I love it. This is l'Artisan Parfumeur Feu d'Absinthe. I love that one. Please do check it out. So this next one is from the house of MAISON Margiela. This is Soul of the Forest. This one right here. And here we got a fruity take on this fir balsam and pine note again. So for me, this one is more fir balsam. It's a grassy or greener aromatic take on that woody note, and then with this one they've thrown in fruity touches of black currant. There's some incense, there's some cedar, there's some labdanum, there's some chili, there's some maple, oak moss, and patchouli. It's a great scent. In fact, it's a very fun scent, and it captures that whole idea of soul of the forest. You go in, you're in this fir or pine forest, and then you come across some, fruity touches of black currant. There's some smoky touches, there's some ambery touches, there's some spicy touches, sweet touches along the way. A fun fragrance, and I love the name, Soul of the Forest. Reminds me of a movie title for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm reminded of a movie. But in the end, it's a fun fragrance with lots of fir balsam and black currant in the notes. So this next one is a fragrance from the house of ANNICK GOUTAL, which is what I have here. But ANNICK GOUTAL is no longer called ANNICK GOUTAL, it's just called GOUTAL Paris. So I've got the ANNICK GOUTAL bottle here. This is NUIT ETOILEE, this one right here. With this one, I feel like it's a combination of mint, pine, and fir balsam. So aromatic green notes of mint works wonderfully with this note. So with these two notes, I should say, the fir balsam and pine, because they're both green and slightly herbal and aromatic and woody. So they complement one another. And for me, I feel like the mint in here is the real true mint, not going into that toothpaste direction, which I have an issue with. But the mint is fantastic here, and also it's dry, and along with the dry pine and fir balsam note, there's some citruses of citron and some immortelle, orange, and angelica. What a fantastic scent. You're probably not going to be able to find the blue bottle anymore. And also they have the feminine bottle, they have a masculine bottle, same exact scent. I believe this one's the eau de parfum though, and the male bottle comes in the eau de toilette. But again, you're not looking for the blue bottles because it's no longer, the house is no longer ANNICK GOUTAL. It is now called GOUTAL Paris, and the bottle looks completely different. But the scent is still the same, and this is NUIT ETOILEE, a wonderfully fantastic fragrance from this house, focusing on pine and also mint with fir balsam. So this next one is from a house called FOA, and this is number 2, and this is it right here. And again, another fantastic fragrance. Love the way this smells. And this is a great scent focusing on pine with palm tree. So you got the pine tree, you got the palm tree, there's incense, bergamot, juniper, musk, cedar. It's a wonderfully grassy, green, earthy, woody, concoction with aromatic touches and woody touches. It wears fantastic. It's musky, it's sexy, and the fragrance actually, to me, just reeks class. Like, it just comes off very classy. It's not ultra overwhelming, it's not like a wimp or anything, and it is also much closer to the skin. So it sits closer to the skin, and just I feel like it's a classy concoction. Just the combination of the pine note with the palm note, very unique concoction, and I feel like it works wonderfully. Those of you that like fragrances that are not overly dramatic, like, you know, lots going on with it, you might want to look into this, especially if you like the idea of palm with pine tree. What a fantastic scent. The incense in here, also want to make sure it's not ultra smoky, so you're not like going to church, or it's not burning or anything like that. It's subtle, which makes the whole entire fragrance subtle, but very sexy, but also really classy. So if you don't know this house, FOA, check it out. That's number 2. I love that fragrance. It's so good, guys. Okay, so we're going to focus on a few classics. This one is from the house of CARON. This is YATAGAN. So this one, to me, I've always thought that it smelled like a pine forest, an animalic pine forest. So in the end, it's pine, lots of pine with oak moss, but there's castoreum in here. The castoreum has a kind of a slight urine-y kind of a smell with artemisia, woody notes, galbanum, oak moss, oak as in the note, not oak moss. Oak, incense, patchouli, basil, and musk. It's a very green concoction, slightly animalic with that castoreum, but a really fantastic, solid kind of a powerhouse-ish kind of a smell from the house of CARON. CARON is a great house. They're not mostly known about Caron Poranum de Caron. They have other fragrances, and this is one of their really awesome classics dating back to the 70s. So if you like those 70s powerhouse, kind of a barbershop-y, woody green kind of concoction with pine and things like that, definitely check out this one. I highly recommend it. In fact, I should probably do a review of that one because I really love the way it smells, but you gotta love the castoreum note with that one. So it comes off a little bit like urine, a little bit like leather as well, because castoreum tends to go leathery in fragrances. But it's not overwhelming, guys. Don't worry about that one because it is fantastically sexy. So this next one is from the house of ARAMIS. This is DEVIN. This is the greenest. So both of these fragrances to me have similar ideas and touches, and these two are definitely classics, as I said. Now this one is a very green fragrance. It's got pine, it's got galbanum, there's leather, oak moss, aldehydes, artemisia, patchouli, and jasmine. But this one to me smells like just a green forest, loads of green touches, lots of pine, lots of galbanum with its resinous touches, artemisia with its leather, not leathery, but licoricey touches. Of course, carnation, the cinnamon is fantastically spicy, and the labdanum with its ambery touches. A great scent from ARAMIS, but this one also has a little bit of that kind of similar animalic quality as this one. So be warned, and I feel like this one is a little more animalic than this one too. So, but in the end, they're very classic men's fragrances. A woman can pull them off, but I feel like they lean totally masculine. And I wanted to highlight these especially because they have these beautiful woody green aromatic pine notes that I really love. And you can see the color of the label is green. Of course, it's highlighting green notes, and the juice is kind of like a yellow green to me anyway. So that's ARAMIS DEVIN. So this next one is from the house of INEKE, and this is INEKE's IDYLLWILD, this one right here. So here we go with a very modern pine forest fougere, almost like you're going into a pine forest and starting to shave with some shaving soap, and then that's kind of what this smell is all about. With this one, it's lots of fir, lots of cypress, rhubarb, grapefruit, tea, lavender, woody notes, artemisia, and cardamom. So in the end, it's a very green experience. It's a fougere after all, but it's also like I should call it a Northern California forest, pine forest fougere kind of a thing. Although I think it's IDYLLWILD is a city in Southern California, but I'm sure sure it has similar climates down there as well. But it just reminds me of a pine forest, kind of a dry, you know, you're out camping perhaps, and then, you know, you have to get out there and shave, and you're smelling the beautiful green forest, and you've got your shaving soap on, and you're, you know, shaving at the same time that you're smelling both the soap and the surroundings. It's a fantastic smell. It's a great scent, and I like that. It's a unique twist on the whole fougere. Anyway, that's INEKE IDYLLWILD. Check it out if you don't know it. And a similar theme idea once again. We're going with this fragrance from the house of Gallagher Fragrances, and this is Evergreen Dream. Fougere again. But with this one, it's a very green, piney idea, whereas the previous fragrance was fir. This one is pine. Pine, lavender, oak moss, galbanum, cedar, lime, patchouli, birch, cashmere, and grapefruit. It's a very potent fougere, but once again, we've got a barbershop scent that's going to the pine forest again. For me, this one's a lot more potent than this one. This one has a little more subtlety to it, but this one's kind of like, you know, the word beast mode. It's an intense and concentrated experience, but again, it's a pine forest fougere barbershop fragrance. And it's very green and woody and aromatic. So anyway, that's Gallagher Fragrances Evergreen Dream. Check it out if you don't know it. In fact, hopefully you guys can get some samples of all these fragrances and test them out if you like this idea of pine tree and fir balsam. All right, 3 more fragrances left, and this next one is from an indie house from Tucson, Arizona called La Curie, and this is Incendo, this one right here. So this kind of goes back to something like this, where the smokiness is here, and it's a lot smokier than, you know, the Cape Heartache. But here, loads of smoke, intense smoke. So we've got notes of embers, fir balsam, incense, pine, and sage. So it's, imagine pine forest catching on fire. Sad to think that, and we've had plenty of fires here in California this year. Scary times, but this actually has captured the smell of the fire burning fir and pine trees. If you like it fiery and smoky, this is the one to try. And it's an intense fragrance, so a little goes a long way. You only need a few sprays with this one, but it's potent, lots of smoke, lots of fir and pine notes coming in together with some, you know, sage aromatic green touches thrown in. So that's La Curie Incendo. This one I had to throw in as well. We're going back to Russia, and then this one is Zagorsk from the house of Comme des Garçons. So this one focuses on the Russian religion and the smell of the incense in the Russian Orthodox Church. Of course, I'm Armenian Orthodox, so I know the smell. But for me, this one has pine. It's a very piney experience, and kind of sort of going into this direction again. It's like pine forest, whereas that one's a fougere. This one's an incense. But for me, this one's lots of pine, lots of incense with birch, olibanum, cedar, hinoki, and iris. But the whole entire experience to me, it smells like pine shavings. It's like a pine pencil shavings, almost kind of slightly smoky, slightly churchy, slightly resinous and piney. It's an interesting fragrance. If you like incense, and if you don't know this series, you should definitely check this out, because the entire series has different religion incense smells captured in the fragrances. Of course, the most popular is Avignon, but Zagorsk is a fun fragrance, especially if you like pine pencil shavings. Anyway, that is incense Zagorsk from the house of Comme des Garçons. And then the last fragrance I'm going to end here with is from the house of Tiziana Terenzi, and this is Ecstasy. So Ecstasy is a pine forest come alive with roses. So not only do you have incense, you have some spruce in here, you've got pine tree, rose, amber, woody notes, styrax, patchouli, labdanum. In the end, it's a very ambery experience. It's very resinous, but the incense comes in with the spruce note and the pine note, and then the rose as well. It's a rosy experience, but it's kind of a green rose, a piney rose, a sprucey kind of a rose, and smoky rose. It's so good. This is a very underrated fragrance from the house of Tiziana Terenzi. In fact, I have a review of this one with Dahlia if you guys want to check it out, learn more about Ecstasy. It's a great scent. The rose is very masculine. It's not an overwhelming rose. It's slightly dry rose, a little bit jammy. Don't worry about that if you don't like dry rose fragrances. But I like the combination of the dryness of the rose. The entire fragrance is dry to begin with, but the dry, it makes the rose dry, so not so jammy. But the overall fragrance, it's so good, guys. If you like green, piney, slightly smoky fragrances with rose and ambery touches, resinous touches, you definitely have to try Ecstasy. So that's Tiziana Terenzi Ecstasy. And that ends my video today with this 16 fragrances. Let me know your thoughts on these fragrances, and do you like the idea of pine and fir as a note, and do you have a favorite pine or fir fragrance that I haven't spoken about today? Again, this is all I have in my collection. I'm sure there's a ton of them out there, and probably the most popular one is Pinot by Pinot Silvestri, and of course I don't have that in the video today. Just do not own that currently. I should get it probably. I should do a whole video on that one because it has a following, a cult following. It's also very, very cheap. But for me, these are what I'm digging as far as pine and fir notes go. Okay, so let me know what your thoughts are on these fragrances. Let me know if you have any fragrances that I should check out that feature these notes. And also, other than that, thanks so much for watching. Please do like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos and more giveaways. So thanks so much for watching. Have a good one. Goodbye.